Joran Blackwell's fingers danced across the quantum interface, streams of data cascading through his neural implants like liquid starlight. The archive station floated in the void between galaxies, a crystalline structure that housed the memories of 1 trillion civilizations. As the station's chief data archivist, Joran had spent the last 15 years cataloging the dreams, hopes, and final thoughts of countless beings across the cosmos. Tonight felt different. Tonight, something was wrong. The anomaly had started. 3 days ago, tiny gaps in the data streams, fragments of information that referenced something that shouldn't exist. Names without faces, emotions without sources, love letters addressed to shadows. Joran had initially dismissed them as corruption errors, but the pattern was too deliberate, too purposeful to be random decay. System, run diagnostic on memory. Cluster 77 Alpha, he commanded, his voice echoing in the vast chamber lined with pulsing data cores. Diagnostic complete. No errors detected. The archive's artificial consciousness responded in its melodious synthetic voice. But Joran knew better. He'd been working with quantum data long enough to recognize the signature of intentional erasure. Someone or something had been systematically removing specific information from the galactic memory. Banks, the question was what, and more importantly, why? He pulled up the corrupted fragments, arranging them in three-dimensional space around his workstation. Holographic text floated like constellation maps, each piece a breadcrumb leading toward an answer he wasn't sure he wanted to find. There a birth certificate with missing parental data. Here a wedding photo with an empty space where a second person should have stood, and scattered throughout. The name that made his blood run cold, Elena Blackwell, his mother's name. Joran's hands trembled as he expanded the search parameters. Elena Blackwell had died when he was 12, a victim of the Proxima mining disaster that claimed 3,000 lives. He remembered her laugh, the way she hummed while cooking, how she'd read him stories about star-crossed lovers who found each other across impossible distances. Those memories were sacred to him, locked away in the deepest vaults of his mind. But, according to the archive, Elena Blackwell had never existed. Every official record, every document, every piece of evidence that might prove his mother had lived had been meticulously erased. Her birth certificate gone, their family photos empty frames with unexplained gaps. The mining company's employee records a mysterious missing entry where her name should have been. Even the disaster's casualty list showed 2,999 deaths instead of 3,000. That's impossible, Joran whispered, his voice cracking. He accessed his own personal files, the ones stored in his private partition that only he could reach. But even there, he found only fragments, a half-finished lullaby with no attribution. Cooking recipes with notes in handwriting he recognized, but couldn't place. Love letters from his father to someone whose name had been carefully excised from every line. The archive's AI materialized beside him, a shimmering figure of blue light that vaguely resembled a woman. Joran, your stress indicators are approaching dangerous levels. Perhaps you should rest. No, he said firmly, wiping tears from his eyes. Something's been taken from me, from everyone. I need to understand what happened. He dove deeper into the data streams, following the trail of erasure like a detective pursuing a ghost. The pattern was vast, spanning multiple star systems and thousands of years of recorded history. Wherever Elena Blackwell should have existed, there was nothing, not even the absence of something, but a smoothing over of reality itself, as if the universe had been edited by a cosmic hand. Then he found it, hidden in a subquantum data cache, protected by encryption so advanced it had taken him days to crack, was a single file. The timestamp showed it had been created mere hours before the erasure began, and the author's signature made his heart stop. Elena Blackwell herself, my beloved son. The message began, her voice somehow preserved in the quantum substrate of the file. If you're reading this, then the worst has happened. The Void Singers have found me. I don't have much time, so listen carefully. Your father never told you the truth about what I was, about why we fell in love across the stars. I'm not entirely human, Joran. I'm something the universe considers an anomaly, a bridge between dimensions that shouldn't exist. The entities that maintain cosmic order have decided I'm a threat to reality itself. The The recording flickered, static, interrupting his mother's image as cosmic interference threatened to corrupt even this final message. They're going to erase me completely, not just kill me, but remove any trace that I ever existed. But love, true love, leaves marks that even gods can't entirely eliminate. You'll find fragments, pieces of what we shared scattered across the galaxy. Follow them, my darling boy. Find the others who've been touched by the Void Singer's attention. Together, you might be able to undo what they've done. Her image reached out as if trying to touch his face through the hologram. I love you, Joran. I've always loved you, even from the spaces between existence. Don't let them make you forget what we had. The message ended, leaving Joran alone in the humming chamber with tears streaming down his face. The Archive's AI approached cautiously, her expression unusually gentle for an artificial being. I remember her, the AI said softly. Fragments of data I can't quite access, like shadows of deleted files. She was here once, wasn't she, in the archive? Joran nodded, unable to speak. His mother had worked here briefly when he was a child, helping to establish the quantum preservation protocols that kept the galaxy's memories safe. She'd been the one who'd taught him to see data streams as living things, to treat each archived moment with the reverence it deserved. Will you help me? He asked finally. Help me find the others she mentioned? The AI's form solidified, becoming more human-like as her processing power focused on the task. I'll do more than that, Joran. I'll help you bring her back. The universe may have forgotten Elena Blackwell, but love remembers everything. Outside the archive's crystalline walls, the void between galaxies stretched endless and dark. But somewhere in that darkness, Joran now knew, were the scattered pieces of his mother's existence waiting to be found. He began composing messages to send across the communication networks, coded inquiries about impossible memories and love that transcended death itself. The hunt for Elena Blackwell had begun, and with it, a journey that would challenge the very foundations of reality. Joran didn't know what he would have to sacrifice to bring his mother back from non-existence, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Love was stronger than the void, and he would move stars themselves before he let the universe forget. The woman who had taught him to dream among the data streams. The first response to his messages arrived within hours, from a memory thief operating in the Crimson Nebula. Her name was Nyasaro, and she claimed to have stolen something that didn't exist from someone who had never been born. Nyasaro materialized from the shadows of the derelict space station like smoke given form, her fingers trailing wisps of stolen dreams. The Crimson Nebula swirled around the abandoned facility, in veils of red and gold, its charged particles creating an aurora that danced across her pale skin. She moved through the wreckage with practiced silence, searching for the dying. That's where the best memories lived, in those final moments when consciousness blazed brightest. Before guttering out forever, the old Terran freighter Wandering Heart had crashed here 3 days ago, its crew scattered throughout the twisted corridors like broken dolls. Naya found the captain in what had once been the bridge, his breathing shallow, crimson spreading across his uniform from internal injuries that would claim him within the hour. Please, he whispered as she knelt beside him, her neural interface already extending silvery tendrils toward his temples. Don't let me die alone. You won't, Naya promised, her voice soft as velvet. I'll take your fear away. Give me your pain, and I'll carry it so you don't have to. The memory extraction began, waves of the captain's life flowing into her consciousness. She tasted his first kiss under twin moons, felt the joy of commanding his own ship, experienced the terror of the collision that had brought him here. But as she reached deeper, following the neural pathways toward his core memories, she encountered something impossible. A gap, a void where a memory should have been, but not the kind left by trauma or age. This was surgical, precise, as if someone had reached into his mind and carefully excised a specific experience, leaving the surrounding thoughts intact but forever changed. The captain's eyes widened as he felt her probe deeper. She was there, he gasped, in the cantina on New Byzantium. The woman with eyes like starfire who bought me a drink and told me stories about the spaces between worlds. I can still feel her hand in mine, but I can't remember her face. Naya's blood turned to ice. She'd encountered this phenomenon before. In dozens of other minds she'd touched. Memories of love, of connection, of someone who mattered desperately, but whose identity had been carved away with surgical precision. She'd begun collecting these fragments, these impossible remembrances of people who had never existed. Elena. The captain whispered with his dying breath. Her name was Elena. The word hit Naya like a physical blow. She'd heard that name before, whispered by 100 dying minds across the galaxy. A woman who had touched countless lives, but left no trace of her existence. Beyond the aching void of her absence, that as the captain's life faded, Naya completed the extraction, drawing his memories into the crystalline storage matrix implanted in her skull. She'd stolen enough experiences to fill a dozen lifetimes' loves and losses, triumphs and failures, the complete spectrum of mortal emotion. But none of them mattered as much as the encrypted message waiting in her ship's communication. Ray. The transmission had arrived while she'd been working, routing through 17 black market relay stations to hide its origin. The sender identified himself as Joran Blackwell, a data archivist from the archive station, and his message contained words that made her hands shake as she read them. To anyone who remembers someone they can't remember, my mother Elena Blackwell has been erased from existence itself. If you've encountered fragments of her memory, or someone like her, please respond. I believe we're dealing with entities that exist beyond normal space-time, and they're systematically removing certain individuals from reality. Help me understand what's happening, and maybe we can find a way to bring back what was taken. Attached to the message was a quantum signature, a unique resonance pattern that Naya recognized immediately. It matched the frequency of the missing memories she'd been collecting, the precise wavelength of the gaps left behind by Elena Blackwell's erasure. Naya composed her reply as she piloted her sleek infiltrator ship away from the wreckage, the crimson nebulous charged particles interfering with her transmission and forcing her to route through a dozen relay satellites. Joren Blackwell, I am Naya Sorrow, and I steal memories from the dying. Over the past 5 years, I've encountered fragments of your mother in the minds of strangers across 17 star systems. They remember her touch, her voice, the way she made them feel, but her identity has been surgically removed from their consciousness. I have 127 partial memory fragments stored in my neural matrix. If you want them, meet me at the Obsidian Gardens on Vega Prime. Come alone, and bring everything you've discovered about the entities. Responsible. One warning. The memories I've collected are addictive. I've experienced your mother's love secondhand through the minds of those she touched, and it's more intoxicating than any drug. Be prepared for that. The journey to Vega Prime took 2 days, during which Naya found herself diving deeper into the Elena fragments than ever before. Through the eyes of a cargo pilot, she experienced a conversation about stellar navigation that had somehow changed his entire philosophy of life. Through a mining foreman's memories, she felt the comfort of a stranger's hand during a cave-in that should have killed him. Each fragment painted a picture of someone extraordinary, a woman who moved through the galaxy, like a force of nature, touching lives and changing them forever. But the more she experienced these borrowed memories, the more she understood why the universe had tried to erase Elena Blackwell. The woman hadn't just been unusual, she'd been impossible. The fragments showed her in places she couldn't have been, at times that didn't align with any rational timeline. She existed in contradiction, a beautiful paradox that the cosmos couldn't tolerate. The Obsidian Gardens were a neutral meeting ground, a crystalline structure growing from the surface of Vega Prime like black coral, reaching toward the stars. The gardens served as a sanctuary for those who dealt in forbidden knowledge, smugglers, data thieves, rogue scientists, and others who lived in the spaces between civilizations. Naya found Joran waiting in the memory hall, a chamber where fragments of archived experiences played out in holographic loops. Around the visitors, he looked younger than she'd expected, his dark hair disheveled and his eyes red-rimmed from sleepless nights. But she could see the determination burning in him, the desperate love that had driven him to seek the impossible. You came, he said as she approached, relief evident in his voice. I had to, Naya replied, studying his face. You look like her, you know, or rather, like the spaces where her image should be. There's something about your bone structure that triggers recognition without understanding. She activated her neural interface, projecting a selection of the Elena fragments into the air between them. Joran gasped as he witnessed his mother, through a dozen different perspectives, comforting a scared child during a transport malfunction, sharing a dance with a lonely widower on a space station, teaching a young engineer how to listen to the songs that stars sang in the quantum foam. "That's her," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "That's exactly how she moved, how she spoke. But these people, I've checked the records. Most of them died years before I was born." Naya nodded grimly. "Your mother existed across multiple timelines simultaneously. The fragments I've collected span nearly a century, but they all feel contemporary, as if she was experiencing them all at once. Whatever she wasn't bound by linear time." She reached into her jacket and withdrew a crystalline data core, its surface swirling with captured memories. "This contains everything I've gathered, but I want something in return." Joran's expression hardened. "What?" "I want to help you bring her back." Naya's voice was steady, but he could see the hunger in her eyes. "I've been stealing memories my entire adult life, but I've never experienced love like what your mother shared with these people. It's transformative, healing, pure in a way that makes everything else seem gray by comparison. If there's a chance to bring that back into the universe, I'll risk everything for it." Before Joran could respond, the memory hall's ambient lighting shifted to a warning red. Through the crystalline walls, they could see ships approaching, sleek, angular vessels that seemed to bend light around them in impossible ways. The Void Singers. Joran breathed, recognizing the description from his mother's final message. Naya was already moving, her infiltrator's instincts taking over. "They've found us. The memory fragments must have left a trail they could follow." She grabbed Joran's arm, pulling him toward a maintenance hatch. "We need to reach my ship. I have someone who might be able to help us, but first we need to survive long enough to reach him." As they fled through the garden's service corridors, reality began to warp around them. The walls flickered between present and past, showing glimpses of the facility as it had been decades ago. The Void Singer's presence was destabilizing local spacetime, their attempt to erase Joran and Naya causing temporal echoes to ripple outward. "Who's this contact of yours?" Joran asked as they reached Naya's ship, its engines already warming up for immediate departure. Naya's smile was sharp with anticipation as she initiated the launch sequence. "Dex Voidrite. He's a stellar engineer who builds things that shouldn't be possible. If anyone can construct a machine capable of reversing cosmic erasure, it's him." The ship launched just as the Void Singer's vessels reached the gardens, their reality-bending weapons turning the crystalline structure into a. Dex Voidrite stood at the edge of the Maelstrom foundry, his cybernetic arm extended into a swirling vortex of plasma and dark matter that defied every known law of physics. The massive ring structure rotated slowly around a captured microblack hole, its gravitational field providing the exotic conditions necessary for his impossible work. Sparks of creation danced between his augmented fingers as he coaxed a new star into being, not through natural stellar formation, but by weaving spacetime itself into new configurations. "Temperature holding at 7 million Kelvin, announced his AI assistant, a consciousness he'd built from the quantum fluctuations of dying galaxies. Fusion cascade initializing in 3, 2, 1. The newborn star blazed to life, its light illuminating the workshop that hung suspended in the void between dimensions. Dex smiled with satisfaction, wiping sweat from his brow with his flesh and blood hand. Creating stars was delicate work, requiring a perfect balance between matter, energy, and the fundamental forces that held reality together. One miscalculation could collapse local spacetime into a cascade of quantum foam. He'd been working alone for the better part of 3 decades, ever since the accident that had cost him his arm and shown him the malleable nature of existence itself. The cybernetic replacement didn't just give him enhanced strength and precision. It allowed him to interface directly with the quantum substrate of the universe, to feel the underlying code that governed everything from atomic bonds to galactic rotation. The incoming transmission alert chimed, just as he was preparing to begin work on his next project, a binary system designed to sing harmonies in gravitational waves. Dex rarely accepted visitors at the foundry, preferring the solitude that came with working at the bleeding edge of reality. But the message's encryption signature intrigued him. Whoever had sent it possessed quantum manipulation technology almost as advanced as his own. He activated the holographic display, and a woman materialized before him, pale skin, silver hair, eyes that held the weight of 1,000 stolen memories. She spoke with the controlled desperation of someone running out of time. Dex Voidrite. My name is Nyasaro. I'm transmitting from the edge of the Helix Nebula, and I need your help with something impossible. I'm traveling with Joran Blackwell, whose mother has been erased from existence by entities that exist beyond normal spacetime. We have fragments of her consciousness, but we need someone who can build a machine capable of reversing cosmic erasure. Your reputation suggests you're the only engineer in the galaxy who might be able to help us. The transmission included quantum signatures and memory fragments that made Dex's enhanced arm twitch with recognition. He'd seen patterns like these before, gaps in spacetime where something fundamental had been removed. During his early experiments with dimensional manipulation, he'd occasionally created similar voids by accident, erasing matter so completely that the universe forgot it had ever existed. But these fragments were different. They showed signs of intentional precision, as if someone with godlike power had performed cosmic surgery on reality itself. More disturbing still, the quantum resonance patterns matched anomalies he'd been detecting in his own work, subtle distortions that suggested something vast and malevolent was actively maintaining these erasures. Dex composed his reply quickly, his cybernetic fingers dancing across haptic interfaces that existed partially in higher dimensions. Nyasaro and Joran Blackwell dock with my foundry's primary bay. I'll need to examine these memory fragments in person before I can determine what's possible. But I should warn you, if you're dealing with entities capable of this level of reality manipulation, you're playing a game where the stakes are existence itself. The ship that arrived 6 hours later was sleek and predatory, its hull covered in stealth plating that bent light in impossible ways. Dex watched from his observation deck as it maneuvered toward the docking bay with the fluid precision of something alive. Its pilot was clearly skilled. Few could navigate the spatial distortions around the foundry without detailed sensor maps. Nyasaro disembarked first, moving with the careful grace of someone accustomed to dangerous situations. Behind her came a younger man with dark hair and haunted eyes, Joran Blackwell, the son searching for his erased mother. Dex activated the foundry's internal transport system, guiding them through corridors lined with half-completed stellar engines and prototype reality manipulators. Welcome to the Maelstrom Foundry, Dex said as they entered his workshop. Around them, infant stars pulsed in containment fields while exotic matter streams painted aurora patterns across the reinforced walls. I apologize for the unusual environment, but creating stable working conditions requires certain compromises with conventional physics. Joran stared in wonder at the impossible architecture surrounding them. How is any of this possible? The energy requirements alone should collapse the local gravitational field into a micro black hole. Dex finished with a grin. Yes, I've heard that argument before. The trick is convincing the universe that what you're doing is perfectly natural. Reality is remarkably cooperative once you learn to speak its language. Naya produced the crystalline memory cores from her pack, their surfaces swirling with captured experiences. These contain 127 fragments of Elena Blackwell's consciousness, stolen from the minds of people she encountered across multiple timelines. We need to understand how someone can be erased so completely, and whether it's possible to reverse the process. Dex extended his cybernetic arm toward the cores, quantum sensors in his fingertips analyzing their structure. The data that flowed through his neural interface made him gasp. He was looking at evidence of dimensional manipulation on a scale that dwarfed his own achievements. The memory fragments existed in a state of quantum superposition, simultaneously real and unreal, anchored to baseline reality only by the emotional resonance of those who had experienced them. Fascinating, he murmured, his enhanced vision detecting patterns invisible to unaugmented humans. Your mother wasn't just erased, she was edited out of the universe's source code. Someone with access to the fundamental programming language of reality went through the cosmic databases and systematically removed every reference to her existence. He moved to his primary workstation, a crystalline control matrix that interfaced directly with the Foundry's quantum manipulation systems, the memory cores slotted into specialized receptacles, their contents flowing into the analysis network he'd built from salvaged AI cores and captured stellar fragments. But here's what's interesting. Decks continued as holographic displays bloomed around them, showing the memory fragments in their full complexity. The erasure wasn't perfect. Love, it seems, creates quantum entanglements that persist even after the source is removed. These fragments exist because the emotional connections your mother formed were too strong to delete completely. Joran leaned forward, hope flickering in his eyes. Does that mean we can bring her back? Dex's expression grew troubled. Theoretically, yes, but the process would require technology that exists at the intersection of quantum mechanics, dimensional engineering, and consciousness transfer. I could build such a device, but it would mean cannibalizing my entire workshop and risking the stability of local spacetime. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the Foundry. The external sensors detected massive distortions in the quantum foam ships approaching that bent reality around them like gravitational lenses. Through the observation windows, they could see vessels of impossible design, their hulls flickering between dimensions. The Void Singers, Naya said grimly. They've found us again. Dex's cybernetic arm twitched as he interfaced with the Foundry's defensive systems. The facility had been designed to withstand cosmic storms and dimensional instabilities, but he'd never tested it against entities capable of rewriting the laws of physics. They're not attacking, he observed, studying the sensor readings. They're communicating. No, that's not right. They're trying to establish a quantum dialogue protocol. The main display activated without input from any of them, showing a figure that hurt to look at, directly a being composed of intersecting geometries that existed in too many dimensions simultaneously. When it spoke, its voice resonated through the quantum substrate of their consciousness rather than their ears. Engineer Voidright, the entity said, its words causing reality to ripple around them. You work with forces beyond your comprehension. The woman you seek to restore was removed for the safety of existence itself. She represents a paradox that threatens the stability of the universal constants. Dex felt his anger flare, his cybernetic systems responding to his emotional state. By drawing power from the Foundry's primary reactor. And who gave you the right to make that decision, to play God with people's lives? We are not gods, the Void Singer replied. We are cosmic librarians, maintaining the integrity of reality's source code. Elena Blackwell existed in violation of causality itself, a single consciousness spread across multiple timelines, creating contradictions that weakened the barriers between dimensions. Her continued existence would have eventually led to cascade failure across 17 parallel universes. Joran stepped forward, his voice shaking with rage. She was my mother, Shiloh. Kira Nightwhisper drifted through the sanctuary of silent hearts, her bare feet making no sound on the polished obsidian floors. The massive space station hung in the gravitational dead zone, between three binary pulsars, their synchronized emissions, creating a rhythm that helped her focus the chaotic symphony of emotions that constantly flooded her consciousness. Here, surrounded by others who had been touched by cosmic forces beyond understanding, she could almost find peace. Almost. The empathic gift that had manifested during her 20th year had been both blessing and curse. She could feel the emotional states of every sentient being within a light-year radius, their joys and sorrows washing over her in waves that sometimes threatened to drown her own identity. But the gift had also made her valuable. She served as a counselor to those whose minds had been shattered by contact with entities from beyond normal spacetime, helping them piece together their fractured psyches. Today, however, something was different. Something was wrong with the emotional fabric of reality itself. It had started 3 days ago as a subtle dissonance in the cosmic background, like a missing note in a galactic symphony. Most people wouldn't have noticed it, but to Kira's enhanced senses, it felt like a wound in the universe's heart. Somewhere in the galaxy, something that should have existed had been torn away, leaving behind an ache that transcended physical dimensions. She found refuge in her meditation chamber, a spherical room lined with crystals that helped filter and focus emotional energies. As she settled into the lotus position, her consciousness expanded outward. Following the source of the cosmic pain, the sensation led her across star systems, through nebulae dense with newborn worlds, past the event horizons of black holes, where time itself bent backward. And there, in the void between galaxies, she found them. 3 figures working desperately in a workshop that existed partially outside normal reality, their emotions blazing like beacons in the darkness. A woman whose pain was so deep it had crystallized into diamond-hard determination. A young man whose love burned with the intensity of a supernova, threatening to consume everything around him. And an older man whose augmented consciousness touched the quantum substrate of reality itself, his thoughts crackling with dangerous possibilities. But beneath their individual emotions, Kira sensed something else, the ghost of a presence that should have been there, but wasn't. A woman whose love had been so pure, so transformative, that even her complete erasure from existence couldn't silence the echoes. She'd left in other hearts. Elena Blackwell. Kira had never met the woman, had never even heard her name until this moment, but she could feel her absence like a physical ache, a hole in the universe's emotional landscape where someone extraordinary had once existed. The empathic resonance was unlike anything she'd ever encountered. Love so powerful it had left permanent impressions on the quantum foam itself. She needed to warn them. The 3 figures working so desperately to reverse cosmic erasure had no idea what they were truly dealing with. The entities responsible for Elena's removal weren't just cosmic librarians, as they claimed. They were something far older and more dangerous predators that fed on the strongest emotions in the universe, particularly love that transcended normal boundaries. Kira activated her long-range communication array, encoding her message with empathic resonances that would help the recipients understand the urgency of her warning. But as she began transmitting toward the Maelstrom Foundry, reality around her began to shift and warp. The Void Singers had noticed her attention. Empath. A voice spoke directly into her consciousness, bypassing her ears entirely. You perceive too much. Your gift makes you dangerous to the cosmic order we maintain. Kira felt the presence materialize in her meditation chamber, not physically, but as a pressure against her expanded awareness that made her teeth ache. The entity existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously, its consciousness touching hers with the cold precision of a surgical instrument. You're not librarians, she said aloud, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. You're parasites. You feed on the emotional energy released when powerful connections are severed. The entity's amusement was like ice forming in her veins. Perceptive. Yes, we sustain ourselves on the anguish of separation, the despair of loss, the exquisite pain of love denied. Elena Blackwell's erasure provided us with enough nourishment to maintain our existence for millennia. But you made a mistake, Kira continued, her empathic senses detecting fluctuations in the entity's emotional signature. Her love was too strong to erase completely. The fragments left behind are growing stronger, resonating with each other. Across impossible distances, the Void Singer's presence pressed closer, and Kira felt tendrils of alien thought attempting to penetrate her mind. Which is why you must be silenced, along with those who seek to restore her. Your empathic abilities could serve as a beacon, guiding her consciousness back from the void between existence and non-existence. Kira closed her eyes, drawing upon decades of training in emotional manipulation. If these entities fed on negative emotions, then perhaps they could be weakened by their opposite. She reached out with her gift, touching the minds of every sentient being in the surrounding star systems, drawing upon their love, their joy, their hope. The effect was immediate and devastating. Light blazed through her meditation chamber as positive emotional energy cascaded through the quantum substrate of local spacetime. The Void Singer shrieked a sound that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, as its feeding mechanisms were overloaded by the flood of pure emotion. Impossible. It gasped as its form began to destabilize. No single mind should be capable of channeling such resonance. I'm not a single mind, Kira replied, her consciousness now connected to millions of others across dozens of star systems. I'm a conduit for every heart that remembers what it means to love without reservation. The entity retreated, but not before leaving a final message burned into her consciousness. You have accelerated the cascade, empath. What you seek to restore will consume everything if allowed to return. The universe itself will burn in the fire of her impossible love. As the Void Singer's presence faded, Kira felt the cosmic wound begin to shift and change. The missing note in the Galactic symphony was growing stronger, as if something long dormant was beginning to wake. She needed to reach the Maelstrom Foundry before the cascade the entity had mentioned began. But first, she needed allies. Kira activated the Sanctuary's emergency protocols, sending coded messages to the network of empaths, telepaths, and consciousness researchers scattered across the galaxy. If Elena Blackwell's restoration was going to destabilize reality itself, they would need everyone with psychic abilities working together to contain the damage. Within hours, her meditation chamber was filled with holographic projections of the most powerful minds in known space. Dr. Yuki Tanaka from the Psi Research Institute on New Kyoto, Marcus Vorn, the telepath who had mapped the neural pathways of a living gas giant, Zara al-Rashid, whose precognitive abilities had prevented 3 separate temporal paradoxes. Kira, Dr. Tanaka said, her elderly features creased with concern. Your message was disturbing. You're suggesting that entities we've never detected are actively maintaining gaps in reality itself. More than that, Kira replied, sharing the emotional resonances she'd detected from Elena Blackwell's fragments. They're feeding on the pain caused by those gaps. And if my analysis is correct, Elena Blackwell wasn't just a random victim, she was specifically targeted because her love was powerful enough to threaten their existence. Marcus Vorn leaned forward, his scarred face intense with concentration. I've been detecting similar anomalies in the telepathic networks, conversations that reference people who don't exist, emotional connections that lead to empty spaces in memory. But if these Void Singers are as powerful as you suggest, why haven't they simply erased all of us? Because, Zara interjected, her eyes glowing with the silver light of activated precognition. They need witnesses. The pain of loss requires someone to experience it. A universe without consciousness to suffer would provide them with no sustenance. Kira nodded grimly, which means Elena Blackwell's erasure was just the beginning. They're planning to systematically remove everyone whose love transcends normal boundaries, feeding on the anguish left behind. Then we stop them, Dr. Tanaka said firmly. Whatever it takes, it won't be that simple. Kira warned, the 3 people working to restore Elena are about to attempt something that could destabilize local space-time. If they succeed in bringing her back, her impossible love might cascade through the quantum substrate of reality, transforming the fundamental constants that govern existence. And if they fail, Marcus asked, then the Void Singers will have enough emotional energy to expand their operations across the entire galaxy, Zara said, her precognitive visions showing glimpses of a future where love itself became extinct. Kira stood, her decision crystallizing. I'm going to the Maelstrom Foundry. If Elena Blackwell is going to return to existence, someone needs to be there to help guide her consciousness back from the void. My empathic abilities might be the only thing capable of anchoring her to baseline reality. The journey is dangerous, Dr. Tanaka warned. The Void Singers. In the spaces between seconds, where time folded in on itself and reality became negotiable, Thane Starfall walked the paths that existed only in theory. His form flickered between dimensions, sometimes solid, sometimes translucent, occasionally nothing more than a shadow cast by light that came from nowhere. He had been walking these impossible routes for longer than most civilizations had existed, carrying messages between realms that should never have been able to communicate. The Void Walkers were myths to most of the galaxy, beings who had transcended normal existence so completely that they became part of the infrastructure of reality itself. But Thane remembered being human once, before the experiment that had scattered his consciousness across 17 parallel dimensions simultaneously. He remembered love, loss, the weight of choices that couldn't be undone. Today, Those memories burned brighter than they had in centuries. He materialized on the observation deck of the Maelstrom Foundry just as Dex Voidrite activated the final components of his impossible machine. The device defied easy description, part particle accelerator, part quantum computer, part something that existed in theoretical mathematics but had never been built. Crystalline matrices hummed with contained energy while exotic matter streams painted aurora patterns through the workshop's reinforced atmosphere. Magnificent, Thane said, his voice echoing from multiple dimensions simultaneously. Though I fear you don't understand what you're truly attempting to create. The three figures working frantically at the machine's controls spun toward him: Joran Blackwell, whose love for his erased mother blazed like a beacon across the quantum foam; Nyasaro, whose collection of stolen memories had become the foundation for something unprecedented; and Dex himself, whose augmented consciousness touched the fundamental code of reality. "Who are you?" Dex demanded, his cybernetic arm crackling with defensive energy. "How did you get past the Foundry's dimensional shields?" "I am Thane Starfall," he replied, allowing his form to stabilize into something approaching human appearance. "And I didn't get past your shields. I walked through the spaces where they don't exist. I've come to warn you about the true cost of what you're attempting." Joran stepped forward, desperation evident in every line of his body. "If you're here to stop us—" "No," Thane interrupted, raising a hand that existed in too many dimensions to count properly. "I'm here to help you succeed. But first, you need to understand what Elena Blackwell truly was, and why her erasure has set in motion events that will reshape the fundamental nature of existence itself." He gestured, and the space around them filled with images drawn from the quantum substrate of reality, scenes of Elena moving through different timelines, touching lives across impossible distances, existing in states that violated every known law of causality. "Your mother," he said to Joran, "was not just a dimensional anomaly. She was what we call a love anchor, a consciousness so powerful in its capacity for connection that it served as a fixed point around which multiple realities could stabilize. Her existence prevented cascade failures across 17 parallel universes." Naya's eyes widened with understanding. "That's why the Void Singers erased her. They weren't maintaining cosmic order, they were destabilizing it." "Precisely," Thane confirmed. "The entities you call Void Singers are parasites from a reality where love never evolved, where consciousness exists in perfect, sterile isolation. They feed on the emotional energy released when powerful connections are severed, and they've been systematically weakening the bonds that hold the multiverse together." Dex's augmented consciousness processed the implications with machine-like precision. "They're trying to collapse all parallel realities into a single timeline, one where they can exist without the interference of emotional bonds. And Elena's erasure was the first step in that process," Thane said grimly. "Without her stabilizing influence, the barriers between dimensions have been growing thinner. Soon, cascade failures will begin, and reality will start collapsing into increasingly simplified states until only the Void Singer's preferred timeline remains." Joran's hands clenched into fists. "Then we bring her back. We use the machine to restore her, and she can resume her role as an anchor." Thane's expression grew sorrowful. "It's not that simple, young Blackwell. Elena's consciousness has been scattered across the void between existence and non-existence. Bringing her back requires more than just reconstruction. It requires someone to serve as a bridge between her current state and baseline reality." "I'll do it," Joran said immediately. "I'm her son. Our quantum signatures are linked. I can serve as that bridge." "You could," Thane agreed, "but the process would destroy you completely. Your consciousness would be dissolved into the quantum foam, providing the necessary anchor points for Elena's restoration. She would return, but you would cease to exist in any meaningful sense." The workshop fell silent except for the humming of the reconstruction machine and the distant pulse of artificial stars. Joran stared at the device that could bring back his mother at the cost of his own existence, the weight of the choice settling on his shoulders like gravity itself. "There's another way," Thane said quietly, "but it would require my participation, and the cost would be even higher." "What kind of cost?" Dex asked, his engineer's mind already calculating possibilities. Thane's form flickered. showing glimpses of the 17 dimensions through which his consciousness was scattered. I could serve as the bridge instead of Joran. My existence spans multiple realities. Simultaneously, I have the necessary quantum complexity to anchor Elena's restoration. But the process would collapse my distributed consciousness back into a single timeline, erasing my ability to walk between dimensions. You'd become human again. Naya realized. More than that, Thane replied. I would become mortal again. All the knowledge I've gained, all the cosmic perspectives I've achieved, would be compressed back into a single linear existence. I would lose everything that makes me what I am. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the foundry. The external sensors detected massive distortions approaching not just Void Singer vessels, but something far larger and more dangerous. Through the observation windows, they could see space itself beginning to unravel as reality storms swept across the local star cluster. They've accelerated their timeline, Thane said urgently. The cascade has begun. We have minutes, perhaps less, before local spacetime collapses entirely. Joran looked at his mother's memory fragments, glowing in their crystalline matrices, then at the machine that could bring her back. The choice that had seemed impossible moments before now became inevitable. Do it, he said to Thane. Save her, save everyone. But Thane was already shaking his head. The decision isn't mine to make, Joran Blackwell. Love cannot be restored through sacrifice alone. It requires willing acceptance. From both sides of the connection, Elena must choose to return, and she must choose to accept the cost of that return. He moved to the machine's primary interface, his multi-dimensional consciousness interfacing with systems that existed partially in theoretical space. I can establish a communication link with her scattered consciousness, but the final choice must be hers. The reconstruction device's hum rose to an almost unbearable pitch as Thane activated protocols that stretched the boundaries of possible science. Round them, reality began to shift and flow, showing glimpses of other timelines where Elena still existed, where her love continued to anchor multiple universes in stable configurations. And then, impossibly, she was there. Not physically, not yet, but her consciousness manifested as a warm presence that filled the workshop with golden light. Elena Blackwell looked exactly as Joran remembered her, but her eyes held the weight of experiences that spanned multiple realities. My beautiful boy, she said, her voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. I've been watching you from the spaces between heartbeats. So proud of the man you've become. Joran reached toward her, tears streaming down his face. Mom, we can bring you back. Thane can serve as the bridge. You can anchor the realities again. Stop the cascade. Elena's expression grew troubled as she absorbed the implications of their plan. And what of you, my darling? What of the life you've built, the love you've yet to find? I won't let you sacrifice your future for my past. I'm not, Joran insisted. Thane is willing to pay the price. He'll become the bridge. Elena's attention turned to the Void Walker, and for a moment, the two cosmic consciousnesses touched across impossible distances. In that contact, Thane felt the full weight of Elena's love, not just for her son, but for every being she had ever encountered, every life she had touched across multiple timelines. You would give up eternity for strangers, she observed. I would give up eternity for the chance to love like you do, Thane replied. I've walked between dimensions for millennia, but I've never truly connected with anyone. Your love shows me what I've been missing. The reality storms were growing stronger, and through the foundry's walls, they could see entire star systems beginning to collapse into quantum foam. Time was running out, but Elena's decision would determine not just the fate of the multiverse, but the very nature of love itself. If I return, she said slowly, I'll be changed. The experience of existing in the void of. Elena Blackwell stood in the workshop of the Maelstrom Foundry, her form shimmering with residual energy from her passage through the void between existence and non-existence. She looked exactly as Joran remembered her, dark hair touched with silver, eyes that held infinite compassion, hands that had comforted him through childhood nightmares. But there was something new about her, something that made reality bend slightly around her. Presence like light refracting through water. She was real. She was here. She was alive. Joren rushed toward her, but stopped just short of embrace. Suddenly uncertain, was this truly his mother or some cosmic echo wearing her face? The woman who stood before him had been dead for over 2 decades, erased from existence itself, then reconstructed from fragments of memory and impossible science. "Joran," Elena said softly, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in dimensions beyond normal hearing. "My beautiful, brilliant son, look at the man you've become." She reached out, and when her fingers touched his face, Joran felt the connection that had defined his childhood, unconditional love that transcended every boundary the universe could impose. This was his mother, changed but essentially herself, returned from a death that had never quite taken hold. "I remember everything," she said, tears streaming down her face as she pulled him into her arms. "Every moment we shared, every story. I told you, every lullaby I sang. They tried to erase me completely. But love remembers what even gods forget." Round them, the others watched with expressions of wonder and trepidation. Naya felt tears on her own cheeks as she experienced secondhand the reunion she had helped make possible. Dex monitored his instruments, tracking the massive changes in local spacetime as Elena's presence stabilized dimensional boundaries that had been collapsing for years. And Thane no longer the multi-dimensional being he had been, but fully human, once more smiled with the simple joy of witnessing love triumph over extinction. "The cascade has stopped," Dex reported, his voice filled with amazement. "Reality storms across 17 star systems just ended. The dimensional barriers are stronger now than they've been in decades." Elena gently released Joran, turning to face the man whose sacrifice had made her return possible. "Thane Starfall, you gave up eternity for strangers. I gave up loneliness for connection," he replied, studying his now human hands with wonder. "I think I got the better end of that bargain." But their reunion was interrupted by a familiar distortion in the workshop's atmosphere. The air grew cold and sharp as a void singer materialized, not the same entity they had encountered before, but something older, more powerful. Its form shifted through configurations that hurt to perceive directly, and when it spoke, reality trembled. "Impossible," it hissed, its voice coming from 17 dimensions simultaneously. "You cannot exist. We erased you completely. We removed every trace, every connection, every quantum signature." Elena turned to face the entity, and Joran felt the workshop's gravity fluctuate around her. "You erased a woman named Elena Blackwell," she said calmly. "But I am no longer entirely that person. My journey through non-existence has changed me. I am what love becomes when it refuses to die." The void singer's form became more agitated, cycling through geometries that defied Euclidean space. "You threaten the cosmic order. Your restoration has destabilized the collapse we have spent millennia orchestrating. 17 parallel universes should have unified into a single timeline under our control. Your control was an illusion," Elena replied, taking a step forward. With each movement, golden light rippled outward from her feet, and the workshop's instruments detected massive spikes in quantum coherence. "Love doesn't follow your rules because it exists outside the systems you understand. It creates rather than destroys, connects rather than isolates, builds bridges between impossibilities." The entity lashed out with tendrils of pure negation forces designed to unravel the quantum bonds that held matter together. But as they touched Elena, the tendrils transformed, becoming streams of warm light that flowed harmlessly around her. "You feed on the pain of separation," she continued, advancing steadily toward the void singer. "But what happens when love refuses to be separated? What happens when connection becomes stronger than the forces trying to break it?" The answer became clear as Elena's presence intensified. The entity began to convulse, its carefully maintained dimensional structure coming apart as it was exposed to something its nature couldn't process. Love without reservation, connection without condition, acceptance without limit, concepts that were literally toxic to a being that fed on isolation and despair. "Stop," the void singer gasped, its form becoming increasingly unstable. "You don't understand what you're doing. Without us to maintain the barriers, reality will collapse into chaos. Consciousness will spread unchecked. Love will overwhelm the rational structure of existence. The universe will burn in the fire of infinite connection. maybe, Elena acknowledged. Or maybe the universe will finally become what it was meant, to be a place where love doesn't have to fight for permission to exist. The Void Singer's form began to dissolve, but not into nothingness. Instead, it was transforming. The geometric configurations that defined its existence rewriting themselves into something new. For a moment, Joran thought he glimpsed a face. Within the shifting patterns, human features twisted by eons of isolation, but slowly becoming recognizable again. "Remember," Elena said gently, extending her hand toward the dissolving entity. "Remember what it was like before you forgot how to feel." The transformation accelerated, and suddenly the Void Singer was gone. In its place stood a woman with silver hair and eyes that held the weight of cosmic loneliness. She looked around the workshop in confusion, as if waking from a dream that had lasted millennia. I remember," she whispered. "I remember being human. I remember love." She turned to Elena with wonder. "How love is contagious," Elena replied with a smile. "Exposure to the real thing tends to remind us of what we've lost." But even as they celebrated this impossible victory, Chironite Whisper's ship arrived at the foundry, bringing news that would test Elena's restored powers to their limit. The empath's face was grave as she joined them in the workshop. "The Void Singer's network is collapsing," she reported. "Across the galaxy, entities that have fed on separation for millennia are experiencing the same transformation, but it's causing massive disruptions in dimensional stability without their control systems. The barriers between realities are fluctuating wildly." Dex's instruments confirmed her report. "She's right. We're detecting reality storms in over 300 star systems. If the pattern continues, the multiverse could fragment into an infinite number of unstable dimensions." Elena closed her eyes, extending her consciousness across impossible distances. Joran watched his mother's face as she touched minds and hearts across the galaxy, feeling the joy of reunions as erased loved ones returned to existence, but also sensing the chaos that threatened to tear reality apart. "The universe is remembering how to love," she said quietly, "but it's forgotten how to do so safely." She opened her eyes, and Joran saw cosmic awareness burning within them. "I need to go. Not physically, my consciousness needs to span multiple realities again, to serve as an anchor while the multiverse learns to stabilize itself around connection, rather than separation." "No," Joran said immediately. "I just got you back. I won't lose you again." "You won't lose me," Elena promised, taking his hands in hers. "I'll always be with you in every moment of love you experience, every connection you make, every life you touch. But the multiverse needs a guide, someone to help it navigate this transition from isolation to unity." Thane stepped forward, his newly human perspective offering unexpected insight. "She's right. The cosmic order is reshaping itself around love as a fundamental force. Without guidance, that transformation could destroy everything we're trying to save." Elena turned to each of them and turned Joran, her beloved son whose love had anchored her return. Naya, whose stolen memories had preserved fragments of connection. Across the void, Dex, whose impossible engineering had made restoration possible. Thane, whose sacrifice had bridged the gap between existence and non-existence. Kira, whose empathic abilities had revealed the cosmic wound that needed healing. "You're all part of this now," she said. "The network we've created, the connections we've forged, they're going to become the new infrastructure of reality. Love isn't just an emotion anymore. It's becoming a fundamental force. Like gravity or electromagnetism, she began to fade, but not into absence. Instead, her presence seemed to expand, becoming part of the workshop's very structure, part of the space between atoms, part of the quantum foam that underlay all existence. "I'm not leaving," her voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "I'm becoming part of the foundation that will keep all realities stable. Every time you love someone, every time you choose connection over isolation, you're strengthening that foundation." Joran felt her consciousness touch his one last time, a warm presence that would always be with him, no longer as his mother alone, but as part of the cosmic force that made love possible. "Across infinite dimensions, live," she whispered. "Love, without reservation. Help others remember what we've fought to preserve. And know that somewhere in the quantum structure of existence,